from his studios in New York. It's time for Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, where sports meets life. Here's your host, Dan Tortora.
Welcome back here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora on wakeupcalldt.com, your one-stop sports shop, and on mixlr.com/wakeupcalldt, where you're listening. You are watching on Facebook Live on facebook.com/livenowdt, and on youtube.com/wakeupcalldt. So however you're tuning into the show, we appreciate you being here inside of the Cafe Kubal studios. And as you know, monpozpopcorn.com lets you know what's coming up on every broadcast. So inside of monpozpopcorn.com's What's Poppin', we brought you the Annoying Moment of the Week, proudly presented by Carvel DeWitt, and went from there to Lead with Juanita Ward, Learn, Evolve, Ad-Lib, and Deliver, brought to you by Chick-fil-A Cicero, and just honored the true friends, and in perfect timing, as I just feel, I call them God incidences, perfect timing, my buddy Matt sends me that positive, uplifting message as I'm talking about the truest of friends, and that brought to you by the top dog of the week, coming from Canine Kamp Dog Daycare and Canine Kampground Dog Boarding. So that brings us to our final piece of today's show, and the first time that I ever get to welcome her to the broadcast, and that is Carly DiCocco here with us. Has spent a lot of time in the AAU world as well as helping out West Genesee. So in that basketball world, has done a lot of positive work and has continued on here. There's a lot of things we could talk about today. The fact that she stood in for Daisy Ridley for a trio of Star Wars movies, you know, and the amount of money she probably made off of that. There's got to be a mansion somewhere for Carly. So there's a lot of stuff to get into here. Let's bring her in. Carly, how you doing today?
Good, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing well. So tell me, do you get any credit from the Daisy Ridley movies, or have they yet to give you any royalty money?
I'm still waiting for that first paycheck from them, but, you know, I'm confident it'll come someday.
I think it should. I mean, it definitely should find its way out there. But all joking aside, I mean, you have been in this basketball world for a long time. You've gotten to do some interesting things in the world, and we're going to unpack a lot of different pieces today. But what made you kind of fall in love with the sport of basketball? I mean, it's been near and dear to my heart, really. Picked up a basketball when I was 3 years old. So where did it all start for you?
I've always just been a true athlete. I was a three-sport athlete growing up: basketball, soccer, and lacrosse. I'm a West Genny grad, so obviously lacrosse is kind of their sport, and it's hammered into your brain at a young age. So I think I started playing well before kindergarten. And I was actually better at lacrosse, if we're being honest. I was a better lacrosse player than I was a basketball player, but I enjoyed the sport of basketball more. And if there's any other West Genny grads listening, you know that at West Genesee Middle School, you start with Coach Terry Sparks, and that's where my love for the game really, really grew. But I ended up quitting the other sports in high school, and I stuck with basketball because it really was the one I was most passionate about.
So for you, being a tri-sport athlete originally with lacrosse and soccer and basketball, how did you balance it all? And like you said, you ultimately chose basketball, but is there still a love and a passion for the other two? Will you still go out and, you know, kick a ball around from time to time? I mean, where do those live in your life right now?
I mean, the last time I kicked a soccer ball, I couldn't tell you, but lacrosse is something I still enjoy. I mean, I watch a lot of collegiate games still, but I don't have a stick anymore. But if I ever get my hands on one, I do, you know, play around.
So the basketball side of things for you, ultimately choosing that, you know, like you said, coming from Jenny, there's so much conversation about the lacrosse world, and you know, I remember coming into the West Genny community 4 years ago and doing a West Genny show that we started at the Wildcat Sports Pub that we still get to do every single month, and that's what I heard coming in. You know, I got to spend time with Mike Masser, and you know, it was lacrosse. It was girls and boys lacrosse just right there at the forefront. And I remember going to visit my buddy James growing up as a kid, and I had to pass West Genny to get to him. And back then, that's all we knew. So, you know, to switch to basketball for you, was it a tough switch? Was it Was it a strange world, or was it ultimately, I mean, like you said, you're growing up with lacrosse all around you. What was it like to say, you know what, I respect it, but this is where I want to go?
I mean, it was a long time ago now, but I don't remember it being a difficult decision. Whether you were playing games or not, you had things to do. And I also worked a part-time job. So for me, it was about, a school work-life balance. And basketball was just the one that I looked forward to practice. I never dreaded having practice. I never dreaded like early mornings or the long days. And that was what made my decision so easy.
And you got to go back to West Jenny, and you got to work with their girls basketball team, and Stafford Spreeder, somebody who I respect and appreciate, when you got to go back there. And it's kind of funny and ironic how this morning's going and how life goes in general, that I just spoke to the Twins' mom yesterday, and I think it was yesterday or the day before, that we had a little conversation, message back and forth, and you got to work with the Twins. I got to interview them and be around them. I am so blown away by, Maddie and Kenzie and just what they did. I mean, I remember, when I first started that West Jenny show at the Wildcat, I sat with them. And so they were kind of with me through the whole thing, and they became like a mainstay and just like a normalcy for me. So when they graduated, it was very strange for me to be like, oh, like now I can't, sit with them and have, who I'm used to having, because they just became such a normal part of my day when it came to West Genesee athletics. What was it like to work with the Twins and to work with West Genesee?
Well, firstly, most athletes don't get to go back and coach at their alma mater. And for me, that was really special, especially because when I played at West Genesee, basketball wasn't a big thing. We had Alyssa Sutherland who went D1, but we seldom made sectionals. And if we did, we never made it past the first round. And so that was like a pipe dream for us. And then going back as a coach and to have such a phenomenal program and like extremely talented girls, that was something so new to me. And the community that they have of the families of the players was just something that wasn't there, 12 years ago when I was in high school. And so it was a really incredible experience. And those girls are all amazing. And for me to be an assistant coach, and in my first year as an assistant coach in high school, to go as far as they did is something that's, I'll always remember that. But the girls especially were my favorite part. I'm more of a people coach. I'd say, I coached a club basketball team at Lemoyne, and that was always my thing. And while I was teaching skills and teaching the game of basketball, my biggest thing for me was to be a safe space for those girls, and to be a mentor, to be someone that they can come to, outside of practice, outside of game, outside of those school hours, and be able to trust me and tell me anything.
And like you said, being a people coach and building those relationships, I can respect that and I can appreciate that, because I think, in anywhere in life, it's about the relationships. It's about what you build, because, getting your message across, it's a lot easier. People work with people that they like working with, that they like being around. So, obviously your relationship building is going to go far beyond just having them there that season. So what can you say about what that did for you? Because you're trying to help these young women, but how did they help you? How did they kind of make an imprint on your life?
There's a couple of those girls I still talk to often. And for me, I played basketball at OCC, and my assistant coach, Brittany Almonte, now Brittany Gatto, she is now one of my best friends. I talk to her every single day. And she did a lot for me, and I depended on her a lot in my personal life. And I knew that I wanted to provide that to these girls. And so there's a couple players like Meredith James. She's at Clarkson now. She played basketball. She also made their collegiate lacrosse team. She's one of those players that I feel like will be in my life forever. I really enjoy speaking to her, and we've created a more familial friendship. And, if I can be that person for those girls like Brittany was for me, that's extremely fulfilling for me in life.
And playing over at OCC and having that experience, getting to continue that on, what did that do for you? Your love for basketball and then going through West Jenny and then being able to go to OCC, I think it's one of the unsung places in our community. And there's so much good that's come out of there. I mean, I think the work of Mike Wheeler on the women's side, and then Dave Paziak, and from him, Eric Cerrone, to go from there. There's a lot that's come out of OCC. Obviously, Chuck Wilbur and everything that he's done with the sport of lacrosse. There's coaches from every different sport that I really think, OCC has made its mark in our community, and I don't think it's given enough credit where credit is truly due. So what did you take from your time there, and what did it mean to you, and how did it improve you as a player? How did it improve you as a person as you step forward?
I always said if OCC were a 4-year school, I would have stayed. And, when you're in high school, OCC in the area, if you're from the Syracuse area, you think that OCC is like the 13th grade, and like you haven't made it if you went to OCC. And I think that there's just like a bad vibe that gives off for people. And I can't stress enough how important those 2 years were in my life. I mean, it allowed me to figure out what I wanted to do academically. It let me just get like my core classes out of the way so that when I transferred to Lemoyne, I could focus solely on my major. I didn't have any of the fluffy classes that I had to take because I already got those finished at OCC. And then as an athlete, I think it's a great stepping stone for a lot of people. I mean, especially like the lacrosse teams. I think of the men's lacrosse team in general, their team is massive. They just always have so many players. But for kids like that, who maybe don't have the grades that they need, but they have the talent, it's a great stepping stone. A lot of those kids go D1 after, so I just think it's great in terms of A, cost, B, academics, and C, athletics, to be able to hone in on your skills and get to where you need to be to get to next level.
And you brought it up, if that was a 4-year school and just what that could be. And I very, very close. One of my friends that passed away that I love deeply to this day, and always send up a hi to him and hope he's, doing well up in heaven, is Rob Edson. And when he came over to OCC, we sat and we talked about his vision. We talked about what he wanted. And I felt like under him, that new logo was coming. Under him, that 4-year push was coming. There was so many things that he was building, and he really, really believed in it. And I had respect for OCC before him, but with him, it just took on a different level. And I thought that, obviously him passing away, selfishly, I was like, I'm not going to get those hugs, and I'm not going to get that time. I mean, he would always get up after a meeting with me, and he would go, give me a hug. And he would just embrace you and just be there for you, and he would tell you, like, I'm always here. And one of those people that I think OCC would have he would have been a lifeblood of anywhere he went. And so, what can you say about Rob? I know you had some time that you worked with Sue and whatnot, but, Rob has been an incredible part of our community, and I speak in a present tense because I think that the lives that he touched will touch other lives, and Rob's work will continue through the people that he cared about.
I know you can't see me. I'm a little teary-eyed over here, but I can say without a doubt that Rob Edson changed my life. I was there that first year that he was there, and the girls that I played with, who are my best friends now, my roommates and teammates, all of us were extremely close with him. And he made such a point to connect with every single student athlete at that school. And I tore my meniscus the day before our first game of the season, or a week before, I don't remember. And I was doing rehabilitation for my knee with the trainer, Chris Downey, at the time there. And I was in the gym and I was struggling and I was crying, I remember. And Rob Edson came in and he said, I know you're not where you want to be, but think about how far you've come. And no joke, I think about that every single day. And I apply that lesson to so many things in my life, whether it's my career or, my fitness level or my goals, anything that I'm doing. If I find myself comparing myself to other people, or feeling like I haven't made enough progress, or feeling like I should be doing better, I should be doing more, I think about that day in the gym with Rob Edson, and I think about those words that he said. And I agree that he made OCC a special place for the time that he was there, and I'm super thankful that I was able to be an athlete there when he was there, because it brought Sue and Thomas and Tracy into my life.
Yeah, I mean, he will continue to be a game changer in my life. And there were days where I went and I talked to him in his office that, you know, those conversations were at some of the most stressful, what I thought were the most stressful moments in my life. You know, in the moment we think like, oh my God, I can't get through this. I can't do this. And he, similarly to like what you said, he would just look at me and go, you know, God, you're amazing. You know, you are incredible. And just think, if you just focused on your voice, if you just focused on your faith, your belief in God, and you just forgot what everybody said, you know, why do these people matter? You know, I love you. You love you. And there's just, I'll never forget, I think the last hug I got from him sitting in his office, and I came in and he could spend, I don't even know, maybe a half an hour to an hour with me that day. And we spent 2 hours, the sun's going down, and he's like, you know, all right, I got to go, you know, you got to go. Like, we could talk all night. And he just gave me a big hug. And, you know, he would just whisper things to you. And he just was that human being that you could never say thank you enough to. And I mean, he did. He will forever change my life for the same reason that he changed yours, that no matter what you thought of yourself, he always thought the best of you. And he could always see your spirit. And when you thought you were down and you were beaten and it was dark and you could find no light, he would always grab a candle and go, here, let me help you get out of this.
Yep, that is definitely the man that Rob was.
So before we both cry on the show, Carly, let's move forward. But speaking of Sue, you got to spend days in the AAU world, and it gets an unfair shake about what it is and what it does to kids. I've seen incredible people inside of AAU, and then I hear stories about people just blasting the AAU for killing the game. So, I mean, you getting to be a part of AAU ball, what can you tell me about what it's supposed to be and what you tried to make it?
Oh, man, I can't say. Maybe it's men's basketball that people feel like it's killing the game. I did see some Twitter rants in the last couple of weeks.
You saw something negative on Twitter, really?
Yeah, never happens. But, yeah, I think for the sport of women's basketball, it's clear now. You can tell when you're, watching a game who's played AAU and who hasn't. To me, it's very clear when you're watching a high school game. You can see of the 10 girls on the court, who's got that edge and who's got that grittiness and that just like sheer competitiveness that comes from playing AAU. I think it's the style is a little bit different. It's faster and it's more aggressive, and I think it just pushes you outside of your comfort zone to play, better girls really than you would maybe see in your high school schedule. So I think for the sport of women's basketball, it's super important. And the girls that I coach in AAU, so many of them are now playing college ball, and I think that's a big difference maker for those kids.
And it is. I mean, like you said, it's just different. It provides another element to it. Where do you feel like it sits amongst everything? I mean, do you think it's a must? I mean, I know you said you can tell who plays it and who doesn't. Where, in the evolution of basketball, where does AAU sit?
I think it's a must. I never played because when I was in, middle school, early high school, and it's still expensive, but it wasn't as popular then. There weren't as many teams. There was like the Unity Wildcats and maybe one other Syracuse team, but it wasn't as popular back then. And so I feel like only the elite really played in that. But now I feel like it's for everybody. I mean, any skill level that you have, I feel like you're welcome to join a team and it helps you get better. But I think it's a must. If that's your sole sport, especially, or maybe you're a two-sport athlete, you've got the time to do it. I don't see why any middle school to high school player wouldn't want to find themselves on a team.
That coming from Carly DiCocco here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora inside of the Cafe Kubal studios this morning. Carly, looking at, we've spoken on West Genesee and AAU as well as OCC and all of that you've gotten to do in your career. But being a woman in society, we know that there's been inequality, and it's happened in sports. It happens outside of sports. It's crazy to me when I hear this statement, because I have heard this within the last couple of years, where somebody said, well, I watch basketball, but not women's basketball. And I thought to myself, but if you're a fan of it, then aren't you a fan of it? And it was this notion of like, well, I love basketball, but not that kind. And I was like, but it's you can't say you love basketball then. So bring me into that, because this is a discussion that needs to be had. And being a woman who played as a young girl and then came up as an adolescent and then went into her adult life, and you've been in the coaching world, you've seen so many angles of basketball. Why do people feel so comfortable saying, I like basketball, just not women's basketball?
I mean, that's a deep-rooted issue. And I think that there is a difference between men's and women's basketball, just in the style of play. And I noticed this a lot watching the Syracuse men's NCAA run, where men focus more on their athleticism and their size, and women are fundamentally better basketball players. They have to rely on the fundamentals of the sport. So one comparison you could take is watching the Syracuse games in the last couple weeks, how horrible they are at setting screens. Just the Syracuse men specifically, bad. They set a screen on an area instead of on a body, but they rely on their size and, their strength. Whereas, as a women's coach, if my players didn't set screens, they knew they would be on the bench, because you don't ever set a screen on a space. And anyone that's played for me knows that. I feel very strongly about that. You set a screen on a body. And I feel like that's the difference. And if you're watching men's basketball, like, you like the diving on the floor for the ball. You love the fight under the basket. But for women's basketball, there's more boxing out. There's more setting screens. There's more, like, just fundamentals of the sport. And so I feel like that's what's different. And maybe that's why people who say they like basketball, like, not women's basketball, I think they can't appreciate the way that women play the sport.
And you and I talked about this. We actually sent messages back and forth about it during the game, that, there weren't being actual screens set. It was, like you said, it was setting a space, but not actually going up against a body, and it was working not at all. And so I saw your passion about it during the game, because I too have a passion for this, because I played growing up as well, and playing from like when I was 7 on, if I set a screen, I set a screen. If I didn't do it correctly, then I went to the bench. So I can definitely, because I can't tell you how many times I'll watch a game and I'll say to myself, why don't you just screen and roll? Why can't you just pick and roll? This is easy stuff. Or you want this guy to get a shot. If you want him to get a clean shot, set a screen for him. And if it doesn't work the one time you do it in 40 minutes, they never do it again. We used to do a thing where if we were trying to get somebody open, we'd set 3 screens. We just keep setting them until somebody could bounce off of us. And it's like, we'll set them on this side. We'll set them on the other side. Well, wait a second, set it again. Like, if you're trying to get somebody open, you don't try one time. You try multiple times. And you put a body on a body and let them know that you're there. Let them feel you. Let them sense you, so that there is something to get through or to get around. So I feel like I'm talking about fundamental, normal basketball, yet I'm seeing that people don't do it, and it's very frustrating. So you're not alone when you watch the games, I can tell you that.
Yeah, it might be a little much, but I used to say to my girls, like, you should want to knock the wind out of the other girl. Like, you should want that girl to not realize that your screen is coming, and you set such a good screen that she loses her breath. And I feel very strongly about screens. So that's it.
Yeah, I can tell that you're holding back your passion for it this morning, but it is. You want to shock them. You want to set that screen on that right shoulder, and then let your player go left. And when that person turns, you want them to just hit you so hard and like feel like they just ran into like a bird going into a glass, a bird trying to fly into a house, not seeing the glass door. Like, you want that. But it's so frustrating. I get it. What were you going to say?
No, I do think that the tide is turning. I think that women's basketball is more popular now than it's ever been. I think thanks in part to social media. I mean, when you have these influencers like Paige and Hannah and Jada Williams, and with accounts like Overtime Women's Basketball run by Chloe, I think the tide is turning for women's basketball. I think more men are watching it, and more even women that maybe didn't watch it before. I think more people are watching the sport of basketball, and I think social media is definitely helping that. So I think we're headed in the right direction. Not quite there yet,
but getting there. How do you respond to I don't watch it till the end because it's boring and UConn always makes it and they always win, and so I'll just wait until UConn makes the championship game. How do you respond to that argument of people saying, it's just boring to see, which, people also said that about the San Antonio Spurs. They called them one of the most boring teams in basketball history. And I was like, well, if being boring means I'm going to a championship every year, I'll be boring all the time. So what is the response to, I don't watch the women's tournament until the end because I know who's going to make it?
I think that's a little unfair. I think especially now, there's so many talented teams out there that are fun to watch. I mean, how can you be from Syracuse and not watch the Syracuse women's team? Especially with Tiana and all that she's done for the sport in the last couple of years. That blows my mind. But I just think it's people's unwillingness to try to show support. I don't know what the answer is. I mean, we had a phenomenal, athlete here, and even with all of the struggles that Tiana had, that should have been the Cinderella story that people wanted to watch throughout the season. Yeah. And if that's not enough for them, I'm not sure what will be.
And to see, the incredible, I want to talk about Tiana for a second because for anybody to go up against cancer in and of itself it's something that, in this past year too, it's something that was on my mind. I'm like, cancer didn't take a break during Corona. Mm-hmm. And nothing did. And when it comes to stuff like that. And so, for Tiana to go through everything that she went through, and then she tries to come back to basketball and the world totally changes. This woman has seen so much at such a young age. Yet when you talk to her, she's so kind and she's so humble and she's so soft-spoken and she's sweet. And you're sitting here like, how are you so okay? And I think it just, shows the strength that she has and the support system that she has and the faith in herself, the belief that she has. Tiana, like you said, if you're not watching because of Tiana, what are you doing? But she's such an incredible story in any walk of life. And, I feel like this is just the beginning for her. I feel like Tiana's going to show up all over the world in different ways, and I'm really, really excited to see where she takes herself in and out of basketball because I feel like she's going to be an inspiration to so many people.
I agree.
What do you think about Tiana's story?
I feel like cancer is no stranger for so many people. Myself, my mom is a 2-time breast cancer survivor, and I lost my dad to cancer. So I feel like for so many people, cancer has affected them in some way. They know someone who's beaten it or maybe lost their battle to it, or they've had it themselves. And I feel like for Tiana to be that age, she's years younger than I am, to have the poise and, the attitude that she had about it is just something incredible. And that speaks a lot to her character and to the program of Syracuse basketball. Their team was obviously there for her throughout every step of the way. She had an incredible support system, and I think that really helped, fuel her along the way. But I do think that she'll go on to not only be an incredible basketball player nationally and professionally, but I do know that she plans to be a spokesperson and to be a mentor for others who may be battling cancer at young ages as well.
Carly, first and foremost, I'm sorry about your dad and everything that your mom has been through. I'm sure has been very trying, to say the least. what can you say about, seeing what your mother and father, have done? I mean, what can you say will always kind of last with you with your father? And because it's way too young to have a dad pass. I don't really even have words. I mean, it's kind of rendered me speechless, and so I'm sorry to hear that. But how does he live on in your life, and what does your mother's fight show you as well?
Yeah, it was actually a little crazy. The first time my mom had it, I was young. I was in elementary school. And the second time, my parents were diagnosed a week apart. It was like a bad Hallmark movie. So my parents had cancer at the same time. And it showed me a lot of things. I mean, my mom was really selfless. My dad's battle was worse, and my mom really tabled hers. And she knew that she had to be a mom to us and to help support. I have two siblings to help support, her three kids as they watch their father walk, towards the end of his life. And I was a daddy's girl, so that's, that was tough for me. But I think I grew a lot. I'm 28, but at the time I was in my early 20s, and I grew a lot. I was the one taking, my dad to chemo, or I took my mom to chemo, and I think it changed me as a person and made me respect life in different ways. And my family grew a lot closer for it. My siblings are my best friends now, and, to bring it back to basketball, when OCC had their first alumni game, my dad was my biggest fan, so he was always at every one of my games. He didn't know anything about sports, I can tell you that much. For as long as I was an athlete, he would come and he would cheer when the fans around him were cheering. But after the game, it's not like he was ever like, oh man, you should have tried this move there, or you should have tried going back or there. Like, my dad didn't understand the game in that way. But we had our first alumni game, and I looked up, and my sister was in the stands, and I didn't know she was coming, but she said, I know Dad would have been here. And so I came here for that reason. And so I find ways every day to share stories about my dad. And I think that's one thing some people struggle with. For me, I lost my dad, and I love to talk about him every day. And that's just how I've handled grief. And for others, it may be different. But yeah, I find ways every single day to talk about my dad, or to do things that remind me of him. So.
And I'm all about giving a shout out. So what was your dad's name?
Brad.
So when you say that every day you try to keep your father, Brad, alive, and do things that he would do, or just talk about him and whatnot, what are some of your favorite dad moments that are like those, like the greatest hits, so to speak, the things you can in a way go back to when you need it? Because like my grandfathers both passed away same year when I was 6, and it was crazy back in 1992, just both gone. One on the day I was supposed to be born, 7 years before, on October 14th, so he died a week before my birthday. And then my other grandfather passed away in February of that year, and then we had like 2 other family members pass away in 1992. So 1992, there's so much music and movies and all the stuff I love about the year that I never knew happened in 1992, because I know only 2 things in that year. My grandfather passed, and my other grandfather passed away. But I keep them alive every day. And now, I'm 35 now, and 29 years later, I still think about them and see their faces at least once a day. Somebody asks me my favorite memories with them. I can, tell you like things clear as day from when I was like 6 years old, or whatever it is, 4 or 5. So I'd love to hear some of the stuff that keeps Brad alive for you.
So my dad loved karaoke.
Okay.
And we used to do that. There was a place in Solvay, it was called Bosco's. And we used to have friends that were karaoke DJs, MCs, and they would do karaoke on Friday nights. And for years, we did this every weekend, and that was just something we did together as a family. And my dad loved to sing, and even as a kid, he would just sing around the house, and he had this beautiful, deep voice. And so, if I feel like I want to be closer to him, I can just throw on some Neil Diamond or the Beatles or Tenacious D. He loved them. And so, if I'm driving in the car and a specific song comes on, sometimes that'll get me a little teary-eyed. And then another go-to for my family for probably 4 years, maybe, we had donuts together every single Sunday. That was our thing. We would grab Lincourt donuts, a bunch of headlights, and then a bunch of other randoms. And we would have donuts together. And even my dad spent 6 or 7 weeks in the hospital towards the end of his life, and we would have donuts there. And then that was actually the last thing I did with my dad, was we had donuts, and he passed away that night in his sleep. And so donuts is like our thing. Like when our family gets together, we grab a box of Lincourt and we reminisce and we enjoy some sugary treats. But it's just stuff like that. And just in ways that I live my life, my dad always said, choose your attitude. And so when I'm having a bad day, it's one of those, like, something bad that happens in your day. It's 5 seconds. It's not the whole day. And so my dad would always say, choose your attitude. And so I try to remember that, as I'm going through my work week and, something happens, I just have to remind myself what my dad would tell me. And there was just a lot of lessons like that he always dropped on us that I try to weave into the way that I live my life.
Speaking here with Carly DiCocco here on Wake Up Call inside of the Cafe Kubal studios, in and out of sports, as you know, Wake Up Call where sports meets life. Your dad he will always be an extremely smart person because you said Lincourt. And I legitimately just had this conversation this week because my grandmother, called her G-Mama, my mom's mom, she lived to be just shy of 101. And she was right down the road from Lincourt Bakery, and that's all we ever got. And I tell people all the time, there's no better bakery than Lincourt Bakery. I could scour the earth. I could be in Italy. I could be in France. I don't care. Like, I will crawl to Lincourt. If a zombie attack happens, I will take all the donuts from Lincourt Bakery and protect them, and and then go about my life. But nobody knows what a Kigley is unless you know Lincourt Bakery. And the fact that, Carly, I mean, I could tell you, I don't know where you're faith-wise, where you're at and whatnot, but I believe in God. I believe we crossed paths, if for no other reason, then I could say Kigley and someone knows outside of my family what I mean. Because if you say, I mean, and you must know this, if you say Kigley to anybody, they're like, what, like an eclair? No, not an eclair. It's a long donut. It's got nothing in it. It's got chocolate or vanilla on the top. And that's it. And that was my grandmother's favorite. And she loved her Half Moons. And I love the headlight that they have there. Their chocolate chip cookie. The headlight there, right? And the coconut one, the old-fashioned chocolate chip. There's nothing like Lincourt Bakery, and I will protect that thing with every fiber. I hope, and when God comes back, if this whole earth gets scorched, that's the last thing that gets taken out. Because, I mean,
Lincourt is elite, and we have this conversation at my office sometimes. In fact, we had a donut tasting contest last year, and we were blindfolded. But I knew in my heart the second I bit into a Lincourt donut, I knew exactly which one it was. The other ones tasted like gasoline. This one was like heaven.
But it's so true. I got to tell you right now, I hope that your dad just high-fived my G-Mama up in heaven right now. I hope he was like, lady, you know donuts. Because, yes. That is all Kigley's and half. And now I'm sitting here going, now I got to go today.
I know.
And they always had, the best. And the thing about their jelly donuts is, you never knew, necessarily what was in it. You would pick it, but they've had blueberry, they've had strawberry, they've had raspberry, they've had cherry. I will tell you that I've been lucking out lately with raspberry. I'm not a cherry one though. I'm not.
Oh, yeah, I don't blame you. I would pick raspberry as well.
That's not my world, but it's Lincourt. But you know what? The fact that someone outside of my family knows, I'm a happy man today. I think that did it for my day. So there's something about. I mean, seriously, you actually know Lincourt Bakery. That's a game changer right there.
Oh, it's the best. And I live downtown, and I could easily go over to Glaze and Confuse or to Harrison Bakery, which is also closer. But there's nothing that tops Lincourt.
There's nothing the same.
That's the truth.
Smart words told from a smart person here. Carly DiCocco speaking the language here this morning. So, Carly, I promised you before I let you go that I would allow you to flip the script on me. It's something we do here on the show called Rapid Fire, and I've done it for a very long time on Wake Up Call, and it allows me to hand you the microphone. So many times when people get interviewed, especially as a player or a coach, you never get to do the interviewing. So there's 4 questions. There's 4, and you can ask me anything in the world, in or out of the world of sports. Now that we know that we at least understand the quality of a good donut, I can only imagine what questions I'll get. But you now have me on the hot seat. I will answer any question you got whenever you're ready.
Okay, it's funny, though, because I have this or that questions planned, and donuts were one of them, so I'm going to have to substitute something else in.
Okay.
Okay, so this or that, dinosaur or limp lizard?
Oh, man. I just had the brisket discussion yesterday. Nobody makes good brisket, like great brisket, in Central New York, but the best brisket I've had is limp lizard, so I'm going to have to pick limp lizard.
Wow, even over, like, the cornbread and the mac and cheese?
This is my thing, okay? Dinosaur BBQ, I enjoy them, but I feel like in the past you used to get more food. There used to be more to it. And
I agree.
And now it's changing. And you always worry about when a company gets bigger, do they lose their sense of self? So I'm just hoping that Dinosaur will, remember that, you started here, you grassrootsed it here, and if you're going to give anybody the majority of food, give it to Syracuse. So I like Dinosaur. I'm not going to say, no, let's not go. But Limp Lizard I met the man that made the brisket, and I respect that. I respect when somebody's like, running the place and they're cooking there all day. So I'm going to have to pick them.
Okay, my next question is dome nachos or a dome dog?
Oh, man. Okay. Are we talking like dome nachos just with the cheese, or are there jalapenos and salsa?
Loaded.
Then it's got to be nachos. The dome dog has died over the years. The dome dog used to be so good, and now when I open it up, my stomach looks at me like, I hate you already. Like, before you even touch this thing, why don't you just eat it in the bathroom? So so I'm gonna say no to the dome dog because I don't know if it's food anymore. But the nachos, yeah, I rock with the nachos for sure.
Okay. Blue or yellow Gatorade?
Wow. Your questions are, did we grow up in the same place? So I'm gonna say yellow because it's the first one I had. So I'm gonna have to go ahead. What?
Mine is blue.
What is your, like the glacier one?
Yes, that was what my dad would bring to my sports games.
Okay, see
the twisty top ones with the thing you could drink out of?
Yeah.
Those.
Okay. See,
yellow's good though.
Well, and that's the thing is the lemon lime when I heard about electrolytes for the first time and I was homesick, they're like, get your son some Gatorade. So my mom just picked up whatever she found and the lemon lime was there, and so that was like my first taste of Gatorade. So that's why I would choose that, I guess. Okay.
And the last one, again, I have to spitball this one because my other one was supposed to be about donuts. I guess like Possibilities or Francescas.
Oh, man. You're going to get me in trouble with all these places. Dinosaur BBQ is going to be like, really, Dan? Listen. Wait a minute. Because I like your food. But I was thinking about brisket yesterday, and it carried over into today. So I would say, Possibilities or Francescas. I got to go with Francescas because I want to say this off the air to you, Carly. But it's not bad. It's just my thought. But, okay, Possibilities has been over-sensationalized to me, and Francescas doesn't get enough credit. So I'm going to pick Francescas because I think as a card-carrying Italian, it feels more authentic to me than Possibilities.
They do have a great patio outside, so I'll give them props for that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm going to have to go. Yeah, I'm going to have to go with Francescas. And yeah, I mean, the last time I went there, it was. See, what I like about Italian, like really old Italian places are, and I'm guessing you have Italian blood with your vowel last name. So, am I correct in that?
Yes.
Okay. So, when you look at what an Italian restaurant's supposed to be like growing up, I joke about this, but, you know, I also think it's true that the restaurants were built that the door, there was one door in the front and it was clear. And there was windows in the front, and that all of the tables in the room faced the door. So if like any Italian like family issues were going on and somebody drove up, you saw it before it happened and you could get out of the building or like run in the back or whatever. So Francesca's is set up like an old Italian like Little Italy thing where, you know, sometimes I live in a mob movie. Sometimes I just live in the Godfather world. And so I think Francesca's fronts that more authentically than a lot of places. And I think they're fine dining like at night when you go there. I don't know. I think the ambiance is pretty cool too.
That's a good point.
What were you going to say?
No, I was going to say, I have food allergies, so I don't really eat there because they cannot accommodate my allergies. But my one funny story from that place, I went with my brother to pick up food, and we were standing there and they made a comment about him being my husband.
Nice.
And my brother and I just looked at each other like, we gotta go. We gotta get out of here.
That's yeah. I mean, I guess that would kind of ruin the moment of
experience there.
Yeah, it would probably mess with. So, what are the food allergies?
I am allergic to soy and gluten.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, gluten's one of those things where, and I'm sure this annoys you, just like when people tell me that allergies don't exist, yet my body freaks out every season. So when someone says gluten's not real, and like obviously you know for real that it's real. So I would and soy too. I mean, like, so how do you navigate? Do you think that most places, like I used to work at Walt Disney World, and if they don't listen to your allergies, like that's a massive problem. But on a different scale, you know, some places are different. Do you feel like people actually take it seriously when you tell them?
Yes and no. Like for soy, it's hard because sometimes they'll be like, "Oh, I have a soy allergy. Can you ask what they like fry the fries in?" And they're like, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's not." And then they come back, they're like, "It's not. It's vegetable oil." I'm like, "Okay, well, just so you know, that's soybean oil." And they're like, "Oh." And so sometimes it's a little hard, but with the gluten one, it's obviously so, you know, massive over the country that most places have options for me. Like Possibilities has a gluten-free pasta. And most places do have options for that. But yeah, sometimes I get a little nervous when I gotta ask. So I usually just try to fly under the radar and get a salad because I know that's safe.
Yeah, I remember my buddy did that down in Disney, and he told them that he had an allergy, and they said, "Well, why didn't you say anything before?" But it wasn't on the menu, so they blamed him for it. So that's a world that you have to navigate through a little bit better, you know, to these businesses out there. I would suggest that they do. But, you know, with that being said, I'm off the hot seat. I'm not answering any more questions about restaurants. So I'm going to stay out of trouble here in the community. But for Carly DiCocco, thank you, Carly, for coming on to the show today and sharing. I had no idea we were going to talk about Rob. So I think, you know, beyond everything we spoke about in and out of the sports world, which I appreciate very much so, it was really cool to, you know, hear stories about your father, about your experience, and more than anything, to be able to let Rob Edson live on today, which I think is really amazing. Yeah. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed myself. I can't thank you enough for having me.
So that coming from Carly DiCocco. Carly, we'll talk with you soon. And in the meantime, if you go to Lincourt Bakery, just leave a couple Kiglies there, okay?
I'll be sure to leave a few.
Okay. Take care. Have a good day.
Awesome. Thanks. See you.
Take care. That coming from Carly DiCocco here once again on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. Getting to play at West Genny and then getting to coach at West Genesee. And like she said, so few get to live in that world, which is pretty incredible and pretty amazing. And anybody that knows a good Kigley, that's good people in society. So Carly, you spread that around to your loved ones and you let them know where it's at. And let enough people know, but don't tell everybody. Because it's like, I want Lincourt Bakery to be world-renowned, but I also want it to be like our best-kept secret. here in the community. So with that being said, we will take a step aside for our final fast break of today's broadcast with a show that was truly filled with a lot of inspirational pieces and a memory to, or a reality to the fact, I should say, to live in that positive and like Carly said about her father, about those moments, and something that happens is 5 seconds. It's not your entire day. And how often do we make the entire day about our 5 seconds where something goes wrong? So remember that.